do you think you're doing, nerd?
Did you just call me a nerd? Geek?
Yeah, nerd.
We all have our own hobbies, such as gaming, watching movies/shows, sporting, etc. We all do them as a side thing, but when it comes to franchises, we all have an interest with series we like. It would either be our favorite movie, video game, show, or even anime. We grind for it. And when it comes to the favorites, we all like to see in our favorite series such as a character, item, installment, story, or a setting. But aside from enjoying one thing to another, we sometimes compare the two to see which one is better than the other. Whenever you're a comic book fan, you sometimes prefer DC over Marvel for its darkish and edgy storyline, plus the amount of glazing you adore it is for its own cosmology and character feats. Or you're some anime weeb who argues some YA random and generic long-ass isekai title who has a very cliche cockboy protag that gets a bunch of bitches for no reason at all, has a better story and writing than One Piece, and the other big three. You're almost getting there, as there are many people who rather pin a character against another character in the fight to see who would win in a battle to the death. And you are pretty all familiar with the infamous Goku tards who exist out there, prowling out anybody who believe a character can defeat their own favorite character in the fight, and this is what we call power scaling.
Nerd.
The one that is all for nerdly debaters to hang out there and to compare to see which universe is stronger than the other and to see how they fit in the tiering system. It either ranges from fucking hypoversal to even boundless level. Most of them engage in heated debates to see which of their favorite characters could beat up other favorite characters in a fight to the death. And I'm here to tell you my journey throughout the scaling community and my experience, as it was a hell of a roller coaster that went from fun until it crashed. And this is a video that I wanted to do similarly a long time ago, but it didn't come to pass. So when I was a kid, I used to watch some fun internet show I've seen such as Death Battle. I adored a lot of their battles such as Deadpool vs Deathstroke, Godzilla vs Gamera, and the legendary Goku vs Superman. It was also one of the times that got me into playing Dragon Ball Z Final Stand on Roblox back in 2018 to 19. Aside, I have taken break from the community because it was hosting a lot of fights with characters I wasn't even interested with, nor familiar with, or disagreed with some of their outcomes, which caused me yips. I have somehow recently got back into the scaling community some time back, but I can't fully remember. Aside, I met a really cool friend of mine of how he introduced me to a handful of his other friends, and I became a part of their scaling community. I was there for a bit until I asked a question about who would win in a fight between Godzilla vs Saitama, and a guy told me that Godzilla would obviously win, and I said why, until he explained furthermore why it wasn't a fair fight, and he later called me a clown afterwards because he thinks I'm asking some stupid question to him. Like, what the hell? It was just some random versus question and you don't need to be a dick for some reason. Aside, this was a tiny feud that lasted for a bit until I somehow kept getting banned from my first scaling server I joined. And the reasons were aside from that same guy who was a Discord moderator that was in love with a trans person. So it went from joining a sprite animator server into getting involved with conflicts with a pig person and such. I later exposed them on my second channel afterwards. But now, let's talk about my experience within the scaling community first. So after the conflict I had with the pig person is over, I later got into scaling more as people introduced me into this tiering system. I watched so much versus shorts, where they are also called WIS for short, which stands for who is the strongest. There were a lot of big battles going around in the community, such as Goku versus Saitama, where I said to myself that Saitama would win because he just needs one punch, and suddenly I got harassed and dogged by a lot of Dragon Ball fanboys while they hated the Keeps Baldi more than any other character they see. Some average scalers and versus debaters tend to create matchups involving characters that have certain connections with each other, such as both Shadow from Sonic the Hedgehog and Zero from Mega Man are created by mad scientists in the past as weapons of mass destructions. When they were unleashed, they became evil until they have redeemed themselves in the end, and even involving thematics, potentials, and the animation too. There are commonly a lot of biased people over debates because they either seem to dislike the other character they were debating about, or whoever is winning, they mostly rank the other character. Power scaling arguments mostly involve with two or multiple debaters if they intervene, sending scans that are feats and statements of their favorite characters and explain why that character is stronger than the other by scaling to their cosmology or calculations. The most popular and sometimes unreliable sources comes from the ones such as Death Battle, versus Battle Wiki, and sometimes other scaling YouTubers, because not all of them are trustable resources to rely on, as many others suggest to read or watch official materials, introduction videos, guidebooks, and even comics/manga to analyze a character's power. However, this isn't going to end up as friendly, as many people have their own favorite characters they jerk off to and blindly believe that their said favorite character solos many other verses in fiction just because they either believe it infinitely transcends layers into outer-versal level or even boundless level. This is mostly associated with the infamous devils of the versus community, with the likes of Dragon Ball fans who believe Goku solos fiction. And most of all, they aren't the only fandoms within the versus community, as there's the likes of the Superman fanboys they believe that Clark can solo the Marvel universe, Sonic fans who think he is faster than the Flash with the likes of Archie Sonic, and Batman fans who believe that he needed prep time because of how much of a weakling he is in base form. JoJo cocksuckers who believe that Jurino can reset the abilities of other opponents with his recomp stand thanks to Return to Zero. Saitama fans who blindly believe that he just needs one punch to get the job done. And there are many a handful of other characters who have been glazed before, and the list goes on. We know it's just their own opinions in everything, but there is one problem. Sometimes we don't tend to agree with their outcomes and tend to debunk them by relooking more into the official scans and materials. This commonly happens with Death Battle and other versus topics that I have covered with my channel before a couple of times. Scalers use the tiering systems like the ones I mentioned before, as it ranges from 11C being zero-dimensional, then all the way up from outer-versal to even boundless level, or extraversal, whatever you want to call it, which lies at tier 0. Nerds scale them by using calculations, mathematics, real-world measurements, and the cosmology involving the dimensionality, and sometimes they don't seem to get the results right. And don't forget about the infamous anti-feats or outliers, where they diminish a character where they're supposed to be scaled to, such as Goku being shot by a laser or Saitama being scratched by a cat. There is Stanley's quote, but sadly, it only applies to in-universe battles and writing and not versus debating. Power scalers tend to slander other characters to feel dominance with their own favorite characters, and by engaging into heated debates like what I've said before, as someone else tends to put out and judge the verdict on who actually won the argument, with each scalers are sending scans to each other which are explaining the feats and statements about other characters. And they are the fallacies in which people believe that they should be taken into consideration, such as the no limit fallacy, where a character states that they cannot be harmed by anything else except for one type of power, ad hominem, burden of proof, appeal to popularity, and a whole lot of other ones. If you either concede or leave the argument, you will be automatically be called a duck for it, which I think means a person who hasn't responded and leaves the argument, not willing to care enough to refute what the other scaler is arguing about. This occasionally happened to me within the scaling community, where I was dogged on by a server for believing that VTubers shouldn't be considered to scaling and why Saitama would be Goku in a fight. Scalers don't like it when their favorite character loses or gets downplayed, and that's what's happened to me before with those cringe Minecraft kids who believe that Steve scales past building level like upscale tons of TNT and get into town level my ass, bro. They even use the fucking overrated end poem to prove that he's a god that sees his own universe as fiction by dreaming. Steve stays at wall level along with his mid-ass dead game, and Blockman from Mega Man 11 solos the entire verse in base form. Talking about toxicity, people tend to double down and verbally assault other debaters thinking that they deserve it because that they're wrong and disagree what they said. Like, these are fucking fictional character dudes, who the fuck gives a shit if they transcend layers beyond out-of-versal level and get an actual fucking hobby instead of liking a character so much you glaze. It's not even possible to have a friendly and fair debate with others because of how much toxic and biased they are. Most scalers don't even have interesting personalities, as they tend to be antisocial assholes, and that's what caused my other friend to leave the internet. This can occasionally lead to anxiety or depression if that was the case. I have actually heard rumors and claims of scalers doxing and threatening others just because they disagreed with their outcomes, which also adds another layer of toxicity if these rumors were actually true. They are so-called friendly power scalers, in which I heavily doubt they could be friendly and reliable as they claimed, since most of them can be assholes at most of the times. I know that power scalers aren't that bad people, but I don't seem to fully trust it. Scaling can be good sometimes, but unfortunately, there is a big chance that it can end up bad. And speaking of being a part of scalers, I have actually tried to co-host another versus series with a friend of mine, but it sadly didn't came to pass as we don't have an official animator, and I have gotten a lot of arguments with our other members. Since he currently focuses more on his verses and scaling shorts, aka WIS, other than finding an animator, there were occasionally a handful of times where other scalers in his servers were nodding off to different anime characters that are underage, or lolicons if you call it. And most of all, the scalers were almost 18 years of age. Centering most of the usernames seen in the screenshots to prevent any form of harassment and provoking, one of them had a very obsessive relationship with an underage character who is described to be 11 to 12 years of age, and despite the shitty claims that she was ageless. And this other guy who was nodding off to a Neptunia character appears to be around the age of 10. This guy is almost 18 years of age. It's ironic how you're using a family member's passing as an excuse to jerk off to lollies as a coping mechanism. I have gotten demoted in the server for talking shit about their lolly addicted person, and the owners have been attempted to defend him and the other Neptunia obsessed guy, as they were just misinformation and jokes. Like, how the hell could those be misinformation when they have all said this in broad daylight multiple times, and I'm not the only one who have noticed that shit. And speaking of just some jokes, I barely even give a shit. Like, you just still hit another new level of low, as it doesn't matter if you try hard enough to argue why adults nodding off to young anime girls are just plain old comedy, as you're still fucking weird regardless. Another lame ass level of excuse to make up. It's similar to that Mr. Beast Crustacean bullshit, where some people didn't want to call him out because he was a trans. Asides, the same guy who nods off to Neptunia characters also admits what he is doing.
Oh, no. You see, the child porn, it was just a goof. It was just for laughs, you know? Why aren't you laughing?
They may not actually hoard CP, but they just act like grown-ass adults who nuts off to little anime girls, and don't seem to find any interest with characters who are above 18 years of age, and rather think that pedophilia is silly as fuck. This was also one of my side experiences with them, as it's pretty rare to see a power scaler defend a pedophile or a minor attracted person, aka a map, like the ones I talked about. They would soon become the next generation of clan of predators in the following years. And here, you can look more into these screenshots of these scalers attempting to defend a lollyjacker. They claim that I have spreaded quote-unquote misinformation to a server that I only joined for scaling, and claim that server was full of doxers and raiders when I didn't even know at the time that it was full of UTTP like wannabe members. Honestly, I don't think that it's my own fault to get those raiders and doxers involved, as I never intended that nor encouraged anybody to harass people. He talked about what was going on in the server that I was co-hosting and nothing else. The other experiences I had with scalers is where they claimed that I harassed them for the things they didn't like, and why would I do that? I never did that. I only stated my own opinion to see why I don't like the things they enjoyed, nothing else. Nor did I even bug them about it, considering that the server that they're in slandered Sonic and Minecraft Steve as most of the time. They claimed that I have went after one of their friends who had an autism or an Asperger's syndrome, when in reality, that's the same guy who got brainwashed by a certain pig person, attempted to dox me with him, and played the victim card. Also, he tried hating me for the stupidest reason ever of slandering one of the most infamous characters in the Versus community. And they tried to ship me with that pig person too, when he's underage. And for most of the times, that server has a lot of kids who post cringe Gen Alpha stuff, and SML, which is a very popular plush channel. But then, I left the server after getting demoted by the owner for talking shit about his minor attracted friend. Asides, a majority of kids from the server, but not all of them, tend to be ignorant and don't really care about what the other person is doing in the server. So far, that's been most of my own experience I had with the power scaling community, and at the end of the day, it's all just about fictional characters, and you don't always need to be right or wrong about them, nor everything. It's rather the best to already enjoy life and see the movies, shows, read comics, or play video games that you love, rather than being a glazer who scans shit about their favorite characters and to skill to see how they can compete with other verses in fiction. So far, that's been most of my own experience I had with the power scaling community, and at the end of the day, it's all just about fictional characters, and you don't always need to be right or wrong about them, nor everything. It's rather the best to already enjoy life and see the movies, shows, read comics, or play video games that you love, rather than being a glazer who scans shit about their favorite characters and to skill to see how they can compete with other verses in fiction. Being introduced to something new by yourself is better than being introduced to by a power scaler. You can rush to create your own verses with original characters, but don't become like those ones who create OCs just to be glazed on by power scaling, unless you're doing it as a joke. Other scalers may respond to this video because I may have mentioned about them, but who really gives a fuck? Attempting to defend a guy who nuts up to lolicons on a daily basis is just ridiculous and a degenerate thing to do. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as I covered many of my experiences within the Versus community. I may repeat myself that not all power scalers as bad as you think, and there are sometimes some good ones you can meet up with. Or, speak with a friend in person one you know about and talk about who would win fights. And if you enjoy something that I don't like, don't let my opinion stop you, as you can continue enjoying what you love. Just in case those two anime jackers I talked about are watching this video, just change your personality, and I know you didn't actually hoard nude pictures of anime girls, but you still have to stop what you were doing before. I am here to mostly spread awareness that I'm not the only one who experiences the Versus community to be a whole mess. I am no commentary channel, but share this video along with your friends or your favorite scaling YouTubers. Enjoy life and see you guys later. And if any of the scalers I've talked about are watching this video and are planning to respond to this by debunking, I just want to let you know that Thriller is a base person and that Hyper Mecha King Ghidorah solos all of your favorite verses. See you in the next video and bye bye!